Welcome to Ask the Divorce Whisperer. My name's Marta Papa, and I'm the host for this show. And we air this show on the first. We're ending the season, and so next season we're going to air this show on the first Friday of every month. And I interview an expert in the divorce field each time for each podcast. And they tell you about what they do, and I have used them myself, or my clients have used them in helping clients get through the rigors of divorce. So our goal here is to demystify divorce and put you in contact for free with individuals, with experts in the field who you might need. You get to decide whether you need them or not, but you might need, and you get to meet them and hear them talk about what they do. So I also want to mention that after this broadcast, we put this tape on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and you type in Ask the Divorce Whisperer, my page will come up. And then you can look for the name and the picture, actually, of the expert that I'm interviewing. So if you find this podcast helpful for you, or you think it'll be helpful for someone that you know, you can look at it in the delayed form, either on my Facebook page or on YouTube under Ask the Divorce Whisperer. And all the other broadcasts that I've done with divorce experts are also on that page. So that's really the best page to go to. So I always ask the expert one question, and that is, with your vast amount of experience and knowledge, if someone you really cared about was going through divorce and you could only give them one piece of advice, what piece of advice would you give to them? So that's the question I'm going to be asking our guest for today, who I'm so excited for you to meet. Her name is Cynthia Hoffman, and she's a daily money manager. And so I'll let her explain what that is, if you don't know what that is. And she has a company called Best Life Advisors. So let me introduce you to Cynthia Hoffman. You can say hi to everybody, Cynthia. So make sure we can hear you.
Yeah.
Great. That's great. And I'm going to jump right in and ask Cynthia that one question. If you had someone you really cared about going through divorce, and it was a difficult divorce, or they were considering divorce, and you could only give them one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Okay, Marta. Well, thanks first of all for the invitation. I love this forum. This is a great resource for people. So I'm going to come at this a little bit of a roundabout way.
Okay.
Years ago, and as a daily money manager, I run into a lot of people who are in crisis or transition. It's kind of a specialty of mine. But years ago, I read a book called Transitions. It's written by a guy named William Bridges. And the book has stayed with me for many, many years as I've gone through my own crises and transition, as we all do.
Mm-hmm.
He gives you a model for how to approach this, sort of a mental model of how to approach a transition. And of course, a divorce is a pretty significant transition, particularly, if you have a family, it's a pretty big deal. And so he says you start your process, your crisis starts always with an ending. Well, of course, divorce is definitely an ending, but you go through all those, it's a mourning time, you go through all of those emotions of grief, the shock and the anger and the denial. And so you have this period of time when you're just kind of almost paralyzed there. It's all about, getting through that ending. And of course, you have lots of endings. It could be more than just ending with a spouse. You could be ending with friends related to that relationship and all kinds of things. So anyway, that's the first part of it. And then the middle part is the part that I really love, because I always think of Star Trek. He calls it the neutral zone. It's a time when your productivity actually goes like to nothing. Like you just have trouble getting life together because there's a lot going on. You're redefining your life. You're redefining your relationships. You're dealing with your children potentially. You may be confused and disoriented. You could just be like ready to, pop. There's so much that you have to do. And
Mhm.
so that's a period of time when you might actually be like starting to think about, if you're not employed outside the home, you might have to think about, how do I go back to work? And it's an overwhelming situation.
It is.
And so,
Absolutely.
a lot of what you're doing, Marta, is you're dealing with people in those first two phases.
Yeah.
Those are the hard phases where you're really hand holding. And that's what a daily money manager does. We kind of come alongside people and we help them through the craziness of that, because there's a lot to do, as you well know. And so the great part of that is, eventually in his model, you come out on the other side. You've done the work
Yes.
and you come out with a new beginning. And that's, of course, that can be exciting. It can be, an energizing time. But not much. Most of what we're talking about is in those first two phases. It's when things are really like you're frazzled and life is not smooth yet. And you're having to deal with lots of things. So in that context, the most important advice that I would say to people is, remember that you are going to need a support team. And that support team has to be your team. You may have people that you've dealt with, like financially, and you may have lawyers in your past and all kinds of people, your insurance agents and your bankers, but you really have to start over and you have to think about, okay, I need my team. So you first start with the two great counselors, obviously your legal counsel, and then your hopefully psychological counselor. Hopefully you've got somebody who can sort of walk alongside you that's independent from all the craziness. It's nice to
Yeah.
have friends. Friends
Yeah.
are, but it's nice to have that independent look who can really kind of, give it to you straight. But you're also going to need a financial advisor and a tax accountant and insurance agents, and that can extend into, you may need to think about things like disability insurance, and you may need business experts. If you have a family business and you were involved, there's some unwinding there. So you may need advisors. So you have all of these people. And I would say, don't rely just on your spouse, whoever that is, to help you find those people, because those, maybe even in the past, they were your team, but
Yeah.
now maybe they weren't the people you picked. So
That's
you have
right.
to find someone you connect with.
That's right.
And then the next thing is just to ask every question that occurs to you. Look for information, look at resources like this, gather your information and then start asking the important questions. But as part of that team, of course, I do think that a daily money manager can come alongside you and kind of be the hub for all of that.
Yeah.
So we work very much on a granular day-to-day level. We're very tactical with what we do. It's like all the way down to, what's the deadline that we have to meet to get all these papers together? Or, did you forget to renew your driver's license?
Yeah.
We're keeping track of all those little things that tend to get lost when you are overwhelmed.
Yes.
So that's my big thing. I tell people that I work with, and I work with a pretty broad range of people, that the old three-legged stool in the financial world is gone, replaced by the three most important things you need to think about. And that is your money, your health, and of course, your relationships. And as you get older, those relationships become really crucial and important. So that's my first piece of advice for
I
anyone going
love
to
that.
practice.
I love that. The old stool is gone. And a new three-legged stool comes in, and it's money, health, and relationships that really support you. And those may be different relationships than you had during the marriage, because that relationship was with the two of you. I know from my own divorce, friends picked whose side were they going to be on. Were they going to be on my side, or were they going to be on his side? And so that was another loss of people that I thought were really close to me, but it was really through my husband, and they went to high school with my former husband. And so they were more dedicated to him than to me. And when they felt like they had to make a choice, and when there's conflict, they do have to make a choice. And you may not be the choice. So you may have to replace some of those confidants that you had before. So what a great visual, a stool with 3 legs. You got to take care of the money. You have to take care of your health, or you don't have anything. And the relationships that really support you. And I like that you said a psychological relationship or a counselor of some kind. I make every client develop that kind of a relationship while they're going through divorce. And it doesn't have to be a long-term one. They can fire them as soon as the divorce is over. I don't care. But while you're making those decisions, your best friend might not be the best person to be asking money advice about money advice. Your best friend, I have a case right now where my client's best friends are advising her about the value of a business. What do they know about valuing businesses? That's a CPA who goes on to school and gets a certified valuation expertise, expert designation, and the next door neighbors don't know, but they mean well. But that's not the person that I want my client leaning on. It's got to be somebody who knows how to value that kind of a business. So you need those people in place. I totally agree. It changes the whole demeanor of your divorce from feeling overwhelmed, small, it's too much, I can't handle it. I can't handle it for the kids as well as myself, to, you know what, I don't have to handle everything on my own. I've got a money advisor. I've got my doctors in place, and I've got relationships with people that I can call. I call it the 2 a.m. phone call. Will you take that phone call at 2 a.m. when I cannot sleep and I just need to say what I'm worrying about, and hopefully you can say something, or I can just feel like I'm not alone, and then maybe I can sleep after that. So who's that 2 o'clock? Yeah. And I say have 2 or 3 people that are going to
absolutely
at 2 o'clock and talk to you and talk you off the ledge. You're on the ledge at that time.
And your life, I mean, especially, as you get older, your life gets more complicated. You may be actually caregiving for multiple older adults as well. So, that's an additional, and I won't say it's a burden. I mean, many people, that's a joy in their life, but you can't necessarily do it all at this point. And so sometimes, like I have a client where I work with the daughter and I work with the mother. The daughter's a busy executive. She's got a life, she's got a family, and there's a family business that's going through evaluation, and there have been some wrinkles. And so part of what I do is I told her, it's the same thing I said here, is you are going to have to put together a team. You're going to have a team. And once you start getting the team in place, things start to become, you can take a breath.
Yeah, it's manageable.
It
becomes more manageable, and the team can talk to each other. You can even say, I don't even think I can talk to this person. Will you call them? Because I'm just going to cry. So would you call them and ask them? Or they told me, but I forgot. So the team can even talk and come back to you as a unified voice of, look, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. And you need to do it for 3 days. And then you got a weekend. You don't have to think about it. Or we're going to do this for you. We can do this for you. Yeah.
And typically in my life, as a daily money manager, I'm not trying to make any decisions. I'm trying to come alongside someone and be that support person. But there are lots of little tricks that I can bring to the table, like teaching them how to deal. Like, you need to look at your credit cards. You need to look at each credit card, figure out who owns that credit card, because there's an owner. You may just be an authorized user, and then who's going to keep it? Who's going to be responsible for it? Those decisions have to be made. But your credit report, you need to go take a look at your credit report and see where things stand, because you may be looking at rebuilding credit.
Yes.
And if you pull an authorized user off a credit card, sometimes that changes your credit scores. I mean,
Yes.
there are little wrinkles that people don't know about, but having someone who's looking at all the pieces,
Yeah.
as a daily money manager, I get to see the intimate life and all the different pieces that go into that. And sometimes it can be quite difficult because there's so many moving pieces. But
Yes.
it's
So
helpful to
many
have
moving
somebody else.
pieces.
It's like that little tickler file in your mind. Like,
Yeah.
did you remember that we have to go do this? And here's your deadline. And then bringing the information together. Many people they're not financial people. And
Mhm.
even, your financial broker, like your financial planner, they do a phenomenal job with projecting. But sometimes the numbers they get to project from aren't necessarily reality. They just kind of, well, how much is this for this and that? And they scratch a bunch of numbers down. They're not actually digging into your bank accounts and actually looking at what's really going on. Much
Yeah.
of what I do, sometimes when I start with a new client, it's like really low hanging fruit. You find people that have a cell phone with 2 lines. It's like, why do you have a cell phone with 2 lines? Well, I don't know. Or I have all these
I didn't change it.
Spectrum, receivers. Well, how many do you actually have in your house? Well, only 2. Well, we're paying for 4. Those kinds of
Yeah.
things that people, they haven't dug into the details because maybe they haven't needed to.
Yeah,
The
right.
money's
The other
been there.
person
And now we're
didn't
talking
do it.
about 2 resources and 2 homes and 2
Right.
households. So you have to look at all that and then spend a little time projecting out what you think is really going to happen. And I'm assuming
Yes.
that's what you go through with every divorce, is you have to kind of look at that.
Yes. Absolutely. And people don't check until it's too late. For instance, I just had a client that went on vacation and her name was second on the credit card. And you should call the credit card company if you go out of state on vacation. So they see all these California charges. They don't think somebody has stolen it. And they know you're headed to LA to visit someone. But she called ahead and she wasn't the authorized user. She was the second user. And her husband never called to authorize the use in California. So she gets off the plane in California. She has no money. She has no access to money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because her husband didn't call in and say, yeah, that's okay. So none of her credit cards could be used. So that's not how you want to plan a trip or a vacation or a getaway, and you don't think of it ahead of time, or you do, but your spouse doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And here you are in a foreign state and you don't have access to money. You just didn't have to think about those things before.
Yeah.
When you were married. He always called in and said, yeah, sure, it's fine to use. Or they didn't even know they were a second user. It's their name on the card. They didn't even realize that they're the authorized user. But
and maybe you don't have any established credit because
exactly.
That's a real difficult place to be when you're used to spending on a credit card and then reimbursing and that kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things on my document list that I make people bring to mediation or litigation is their credit report. They're like, don't you just need my FICO score? I'm like, no, need your whole credit report, because we need to see what's in your name, what's in your spouse's name. So we know who's really legally liable for those expenses, and you're charging on the wrong card, or your spouse is charging on your card, and you don't want to be responsible for those charges. It was okay before, but it's not okay now. And we're just too busy in our lives to check out those kinds of details. But that's part of your job. And part of my job to say, you need to check out this detail. I need this detail. Why do you need my credit report? Because I'm going to go through it with you and see is it accurate? And second, what's your name first on? And are any of your spouse's bills being paid out of these? So on a daily basis, you're trying to get kids to school on time, kids to soccer on time, you to work on time, something to pick up for dinner on time, doing homework, kids' baths, bed, and now you've got 10 minutes before you go to bed. There just isn't time. So you need somebody else's help. Totally agree. You need more help during that time.
Well, yes, exactly. I think that one of the things that occurs to me also, and I'm sure you deal with, as most divorce lawyers deal with difficult divorces. And one of the things that daily money managers can do, and depending on, I mean, everybody has their own business, but I tend to be more of a concierge. And that is to be the sort of go-between when there are financial issues and difficulties, like even getting copied on emails or text messages, to kind of be the repository for that, so that everybody stays calm and cool, because there's a
Yeah.
third party
That's
there.
great. That's
Yeah,
great.
it really is. It really is, because, sometimes even keeping a family calendar for everyone, so that everybody knows, who's on first and which dates. Every year you have to kind of look at the calendar, especially if there are children, and it's like, figure out who's under the decree, who's getting what when. And so that kind of takes the, if you can't get along, it kind of is a neutral party there. And unlike,
Yes.
unlike having to hire somebody specifically for that, if you're already working with someone in their finances, then it's just kind of an extra thing to do.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
What a great idea. Knowing that a third party is looking at what you're writing changes the way you write it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Makes
It's
it
like,
way more neutral and less hostile, and that affects the way the whole divorce goes. The less hostile, the faster the divorce is going to go, and the less money you're going to spend on lawyers.
yeah,
What do you
I've
think?
had
Keep that money for yourself. Don't pay it
lost
to
a
the
ton of
lawyer.
money, yeah, in divorce, and actually had to go back to work for, like, she's still working. It's like
Yeah.
heartbreaking to think of someone
Yeah.
who was financially very stable to have to
Yeah.
continue to work into her 60s and
Yeah.
70s. But that happens. That happens. So yeah, we can be that go-between. I think that's one of the things that people can do. But mainly what I do for people is, and it can be a short-term thing or it can be a long-term thing, depending on the situation. If you're a busy executive and you've got businesses to run and family and the whole thing, what I can come in and help people do is get things organized in a logical way. Typically, that means that if you have investments coming out of a divorce, that we push the investments and most of the income streams off to the financial planner, and then set up a separate account for bill pay and things like that. And then they get fed monthly a certain amount of money, so that it's kind of all planned in advance, because you don't want to be just like, going out and doing everything willy-nilly. You need to sort of know what your budget is. And if you have a certain amount of money coming into your account on a regular basis, you kind of know what you have to spend. And that also keeps it safe from the scammers.
Yeah.
I,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And somehow I just lost you again here. I don't know what happened here. But anyway, so that kind of helps with the whole situation where people are being taken. And a lot of the banks nowadays will handle that, but it takes time for, like, someone comes and takes some money out of your bank account. It takes time for the bank to go through the process of replacing it. So what do you do in the
Yes.
meantime? And
Yeah.
those things happen.
Yeah.
Those things
Cash
happen
available.
everywhere. They happen to executives.
Yes.
Someone
Yeah.
called it fishing for the little guy and whaling for the executives. The whales have the big money, and they get
Yeah.
money taken just like the little guys do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having kind of a split system where, to get the money out of the brokerage side, you have to go call a person. You can't just transfer it. So
Yeah.
kind of setting that up, and then setting up like a separate thing with your credit card. So maybe you're going to pay a bunch of bill pay on your credit card, and you have one card you leave at home all the time and you never take it out of the house. And the other one's your day-to-day spending, debit or credit card, whatever works for you. But people end up spending everything and doing bill pay on their credit card, and then they lose that credit card and they got to do it all over again.
That's right.
So I help people kind of organize things in a logical way, and then I can either stay there and continue to help, or I can go away. It depends. If they get to that new beginning and they feel confident that they know where everything is and how everything should work, I kind of hand over a piece of paper. I call it client information form. It kind of has all that next of kin stuff, all that end of life stuff, all pulled together, which everyone should have. Everyone should have that.
Yes. Yes. Can you talk to us about what we call gray divorces? Because so many, my clientele is getting older and older, and I'm seeing so many people in their 60s, close to 65 or 65, getting divorced. Can you tell us, can you give us some advice for those people?
Well, that's actually an area that I work in very specifically. I typically work with females who are 50 plus years old in crisis or transition, all kinds of situations. But gray divorce is actually the fastest growing segment of divorce. It used to be that, we talk about, half of people get divorced, but the younger people are not getting divorced at a higher rate. It's the gray divorce, 50 plus, who are actually getting divorced. And of course, Marta, think about that in terms of the context of where you are in your life. You probably still have kids maybe in high school.
Yeah.
You may have a parent or two or three, or, if parents got remarried, there could be a multiple group of people that need some kind of tending, maybe not day to day, but, there could be some caregiving that's going on there. And so, and then think about this, one of those people dies and leaves you money. So there's estates to manage potentially, and there is money that's flowing down to you. And as a female, that's a rapidly growing piece of the financial planning industry. Because I think, is it 2021, women in the US were holding $71 trillion in assets, and that is like still growing. Because the generation before is now passing down their wealth. And so not only do you have your own money to manage, you now have to think about, how do I manage this pot of money that we really, you want to hold on to that, and you want to make that like there for when you're in your 70s and 80s and 90s. And again, there's where the health comes in. It's like, you want to hold on to your health because, you may get remarried, but you may end up being that single woman or man, and you need to plan for that situation. So anyway, there's a lot of moving parts in those later years. You've got 401ks, you've got pension plans to deal with. Club memberships. I mean, you're a little more established. There are things like toys, boats, and motorcycles and RVs. It just gets a little more complicated at that point in life.
It does.
I have some young nieces who got divorced, and it was like no big deal. They just kind of split the money and went away.
Yeah, but the longer you're married, the more entwined you get, and more entwined your incomes and your assets get, and the harder it is to unravel them, and in a way that you both can agree. And then once they're unraveled, okay, what do you have, and what does your spouse have, and how are you going to manage that? Who's going to manage that? You didn't used to have to manage it because your spouse always did that. You did X and your spouse did Y. Now you don't have a spouse to do Y. And so you're thrown into that role, and nobody's taught you that role. You haven't kept up on that role because you were doing your role. So the longer people are married, the harder it is to untangle their finances, and even their relationship and long-term friend relationships, friends from church for 30 years. And who gets to keep going to that church and who doesn't? Because you both don't want to go there. So in mediation, sometimes we mediate who gets to go to the Lutheran choir.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
Who has to go to the 10 o'clock service instead of the 8 o'clock service? So because you don't want to be sitting in the pew together. And who takes the kids?
I knew a divorce situation where they had to not go to a certain library. Gosh. This is my library. It's in my neighborhood.
You never thought you had to divide the library.
No.
Right? Yeah, it does. It gets more complicated. Yeah. Can you tell us some more about you started to talk about people in between, that you might have kids in high school or college. I mean, kids in college are still kids. You're still financially responsible for them in Missouri till they're 21. And so they're still kids, and you're still paying child support in addition to paying for college. So you have
there's a FAFSA to fill out every year. You have to fill out that FAFSA every year.
Form.
Exactly. And that's I've done that numerous times now.
Oh my gosh.
Every time I do it, I have to be very careful to read the details.
And then they're also helping manage their older parents who are wanting to stay at home, and and not wanting to go to a facility, wanting to stay at home as long as they can.
Right.
So you're trying to manage that too. So can you help those people? And then you have a divorce thrown in on top of it.
Yeah. And that's where my background is a pretty broad background for a daily money manager. I do work a lot with older adults and kind of helping like their kids help their kids manage that situation. One of the things that I was just thinking about something and it kind of slipped my mind here for a second. But anyway, I know that's, I wanted to say, one of the things that I do that not all daily money managers do is I've done a lot of commercial real estate management, done a lot of construction management in my home and various other places. And I help people like look at their real estate and look at their, whole picture. And so it becomes the kind of thing where like, if they have an older adult and the house has probably got deferred maintenance, I can help them get to realtors and various resources and figure out whether they want to fix it up or whether they need to just do the basics to keep the mom and dad there and comfortable. But, there could be a need for ramps, and those are all contract things. And many people are not comfortable with going out and finding the person to do that.
Yeah.
And finding the right person that's reliable and insured and the whole bit.
Yeah.
Like you can run into all kinds of things. And particularly a lot of older adults, they just pay any bill. I've had people that have paid people before they did the work.
Oh no.
Oh no, we don't do that. We need an insurance certificate and we need to run with the work, and we're happy with the work. So I kind of am that watchtower person. I've had several clients just recently where there was a storm a couple of years ago, and we went and talked to, I have a couple of roofers I work with, and they're like, oh yeah, that's hail damage and new roofs, in situations where, they would have eventually had to put on a whole new roof at their own dollar. So having someone just to remind you of, well, this is possible, or let's look at just getting this, this door fixed, let's get the door, many people don't want to lock their doors anymore. And so let's get a lockbox outside. So even if they forget to lock it, somebody can lock that door. It's a different, you have to make sure they have pieces in place, like a mobile health help kind of pendants. People don't know how to get all that stuff in place.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Wow.
And I'm sure you talk with your divorcees about updating their estate planning documents and that kind of thing, because that's an appropriate time to do it. But there are so many older adults that I run into who they did it 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it needs a total revamp.
Totally.
And those are like, I will, and they don't know who to go to.
Yeah.
They don't remember exactly what they want. So we'll sit down and we'll say, okay, here's what you said before.
Yeah.
And here's the pros and cons of that. Now let's go talk to a lawyer who can walk you through this.
Yeah. Right.
And I'll literally go alongside them.
Yeah.
And make that happen. So
wow, you do a lot of stuff. It's
an exciting thing that I do. I enjoy every moment of it. It is it's very rewarding from my perspective. Yeah.
So if people would like to contact you, can you give them a website or URL, some way that they can contact you in the future?
Yes. Well, you can see at the top here, if you can read this, it's probably too tiny for many people to see it, but it's best, BEST, life, LIFE, just like living your best life. So bestlifeadvisors.us, like Uncle Sam. So bestlifeadvisors.us, and advisors is with an ORS.
Okay.
Someday I'm going to change that website, but
and they can, there's a form on there where they can contact you, and you'll respond back to them. That's great. That's great. Well, you have a very interesting job, a hodgepodge of a lot of jobs that I think most people don't know, that there's one person out there that can do all those different things. And that can be one leg of your stool, that stool that you need of helpers. So thank you so much for your time and your advice and the breadth of your advice. And I hope people who watch you talk and say, oh my gosh, This is what I've been needing. This is what I've been praying for. Can access you and your information and your help. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
And my pleasure. I thank you. Yes, lovely.
My pleasure too. And remember, you can look her up on YouTube under
No.
Ask the Divorce Whisperer.
Oh, got you. Yeah.
And so this is going to be our last episode for this season. And we'll see you when the new season starts on the first Friday of September. Ask the Divorce Whisperer on the first Friday of September at 1:00. Okay, wish you the best till then. Hope you have all the resources that you need. If not, call one of us. We'll get you connected, and have a great summer. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.